We are going to talk about, well, we're going to have a panel, lots of people talking. So Emil from Funday Factory, I think you're there. I'm going to, you've got a great, in fact, I'm going to let Emil, I'm going to let you introduce your team, but should we get everybody on at the same time? And then Emil will get you to go. So you're going to talk to us about lessons learned in game monetization. So I will listen in, and I'm sure I'll have a few things to chip in at the end, but I'll try to keep myself on mute so I don't interrupt. So guys, Emil, over to you. Share with our panel, and over to you.
Thanks, Oscar, and welcome everyone to this panel where we'll be talking about lessons learned in game monetization. We have an awesome lineup of speakers. The panelists represent tons of years of experience within this space across a wide array of professions. So we're going to start with a quick round of introductions. So Afsar, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So hi guys, this is Afsar from Gameberry Labs. I'm the co-founder of Gameberry, and we have been into board games in the last 4 years. We have built Ludo Star and Parcheesi Star, and our games are doing like 6 million daily active users right now. And we like to build games that people like to grow old with.
It's an awesome way to look at it. Games to grow with. Otto, how about you?
Hello, my name is Otto. I work as an ad monetization manager at Fingersoft, and I have a huge urge to answer all the questions Ilpo just got since we are working together with Ilpo and very closely. He's a good friend of mine. But also, I've been working for Fingersoft, I think, almost 5 years now, and as an ad monetization manager, 1.5 years. I started as a software engineer, and then I smoothly warped to the business development side since I was working 2 years with the ad SDKs and all the things Ilpo just described over there and the earlier speak on the technical side, and now on the business development side. So very excited to be here, and thanks for having me.
Thank you, Otto. I think there's a running joke that everyone in Finland knows each other. This supports that theory quite nicely. Saumya, how about you?
Hi, I'm Saumya. I'm a producer for mobile games, and varyingly across all the games and companies I've worked for, I've either been directly responsible for live ops and monetization, or worked really closely with product managers and VP of sales and analytics to sort of get shit done. Basically, that's my job.
Nice. And Alex?
Hi everyone, I'm Alex Ginn. I'm the Director of Sales at Adverty. Adverty are a leading in-game ad tech platform that enables publishers and developers to add a new stream of revenue monetization to their platform, as well as helping brands that are desperate to get to reach gamers. We give them a safe and really powerful way of reaching their audiences.
Excellent, thank you. And finally you, Matt.
Hi everybody, I'm Matt Casey. I'm Product Director at Jagex, where I've been working in monetization and product management for about 6 to 7 years on our MMORPG RuneScape, which just hit 20 years old. So happy birthday, RuneScape. Most of the time, yeah, I'm working with live ops and content teams. More recently on some of our kind of growth stuff, like last year we went out on Steam for the first time. This year we've got full launches on iOS and Android of the mobile versions. So yeah, plenty of lessons learned and plenty of mistakes made, and happy to talk about any of those, some of them anyway.
Thanks, Matt. And my name is Emil. I'll be the moderator today. I work at Funday Factory, where I'm a product manager and partner, and I've worked with games for about 10 years. I once shipped a game to the Iyer, so don't take business advice from me, please. I since then have gotten a little bit smarter with the help of other smart people at our company. So we've been doing a lot of free-to-play games, as well as work for hire projects for Lego. But really excited about this, as I think there's a ton of stuff that I also want to ask you guys. So let's get started. So there's a ton of different games out there. There's a ton of different genres. Should your approach to monetization also take that into account? There's ads, there's IP, there's subscription. There's even other types of monetization starting to sort of knock at the door. Which do I pick, and how do I determine? Otto, how do you guys approach it in Finland?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it's really up to genre. But I would say that be like brave and try different things. For example, the hill climb racing games which we are developing and they are like 8 years. The original hill climb racing is 8 years old. So it started with only like banner ads, the monetization. And now if you try the hill climb racing 2, you can find ads and IAPs and season pass and VIP subscription model. So we have been like expanding and trying to find a good solution, and it really depends on the game also. So that if it's like a great variety of ways of playing the game, then you should have like a multiple ways of monetize it. If it's a very simple game, it's easy to choose certain monetization method. But I encourage people to experiment and find the solution suitable for the game and take some data out of the game and rely on it.
So basically start small and then sort of from a small focused core build on top of it.
Yeah, I would say.
Is that something that that you can recognize, Saumya?
Yeah, for sure. I think that certainly there are some game genres that lend themselves very well to a particular monetization model. For example, hyper casual games, ads are the best thing. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a way to make subscription, work over there. But I think in general, the trend in the entire industry is towards hybridization. For most games, you won't find a pure IAP or a pure ad or pure subscription, or I should say subscription light. I don't think anyone does, absolute, subscriptions in the way they've always been classically done. It's more about getting more rewards or getting more, bang for your buck if you put down something for the long term. And I think, given my background, I would also, like to plug community management as one of the support systems towards monetization. Especially VIP management, building that long-term relationship with your players as well is so critical, because as we are seeing the lifetime of our mobile games extend into years and years and years, we're coming to realize more the importance of that long-term retention as well. So yeah.
So if we can dig a little bit deeper there, you're touching on something very interesting in terms of community. What sort of approach would you recommend taking to building a community, and when should you start going down that path as sort of using it as a measuring stick for monetization, I guess?
Right, that's a good question. And in terms of directly measuring the impact of your community activities on monetization, it does get a little bit tricky. I would say that the amount of effort that you put in depends a lot, again, on the kind of game that you have and the kind of genre that you have. For example, games that have a very strong PvP or just a communal component, I should say, whether that's competition or cooperation, every single player matters. So it's good to have wide-ranging community activities, whereas there are some genres where it's just a single-player experience. I think about casino games and hyper-casual as well. So there you may not need to put in so much effort, but I think it's really important to take care of your VIP players, most of all. And that's not just your top spenders, but also, maybe your social influencers or players who have been around for a really, really long time, even if they haven't converted yet. Because I think I've seen, some data, or there were some studies done that showed that players who converted after 1 year at like D360, in fact, turned into the most valuable, players overall. So it's so critical to sort of keep that relationship alive and maintain good relationships and show your players how much you appreciate their loyalty and the time they've spent in your game.
And I think, as you talk about day 360, I'm getting a little bit dizzy over here thinking about the payback windows and the time to recoup whatever investment. And I've got, executive breathing down my neck, and it's like, when is this going to pay off? Is that something that you can recognize, Afsar? As a founder, I'm guessing, payback windows and actually getting revenue and investment back must be top of mind for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of companies, not just us, but a lot of companies look from their product strategy from the point of view of the payback window itself. Some of them have a 6 months payback window, some of them have 12 months, some have 24 months as well. And some have a very portfolio model of payback window where what they do is they move player from one game to other game, and they think more from a portfolio perspective. That what if this user has spent significant amount of time across my games, how much is going to give me at the end of the 2 years? So that's pretty critical, and it's very game dependent, and it scares me if the payback window is coming on D365.
That's good to hear that you're as scared as I am. How about you, Matt? Are you guys scared for long payback windows in MMORPGs and RuneScape? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, new bearer. Yeah, I guess we're a bit of an anomaly because our average player lifetime is something crazy like over 7 years. So all the normal metrics for us are just out of the window. But I mean, we kind of started out with, to Saumya's point, we originally kind of an ad model way back when we were a browser-based kind of game, 18 years ago. We actually have we introduced subscription and been running a subscription model ever since, which has worked really, really well for us. More recently, we've kind of hybridized it again and brought in other kind of paid features, monetization through MTX and additional kind of services. So now we have a really kind of strong kind of hybrid model. But personally, I find it really interesting how things are kind of coming full circle, and there's a lot of conversations happening around subscription again now. Things like, software as a service driving that, games as a service. And from a business point of view for us, it's a really, really, good position to be in, to have that kind of annual revenue locked in, and we have a lot of our VIP players who are paying us their subscription, in large upfront chunks, which is, really good for us to, from a business protection point of view. So, yeah.
That makes a ton of sense. I think, so basically, you're saying that you started with ads, transitioned to subscriptions, and then now you're in the sort of, as to Saumya's point, in sort of hybrid territory.
Yeah, and I think really it's about finding the right model for the right customers, rather than just having the list of stuff that we sell. How do you build that service around what the player actually wants? So that's kind of where we're thinking these days, or trying to.
Are you seeing the same thing, Alex? Sort of a need to build the right tools and the right type of monetization systems for the customer, dependent on who they are? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, so what our business, what our main value is for publishers of all sizes, but really we see a lot of services provided for medium to small to large sized publishers that are looking to monetize their games in a very quick way, in a very safe way, and a brand safe way as well. So we're helping to bring brands that are desperate to reach wide audiences, and obviously within the mobile gaming space, it's super easy to do that and to enable that reach. And we're making sure that the ads that we're showing protect the user's experience, because for a small developer or for a small game that's only maybe been out for 2, 3, 4 months or something, it's so important to hold on to those day one users and to protect those guys and keep them on board for your journey as a game and as you develop. So we make sure that our ad placements are completely native, non-intrusive, non-obstructive. It does not interfere with the player's experience whatsoever. So we know that we've done tests before over a 2-week period where we worked with a very large game publisher, and were able to see that there was absolutely zero negative feedback on any of the app stores. We were able to see that there was no retention losses that were against off the normal grain of what they would tend to see. So yeah, we basically want to position ourselves as a way of making sure that we're providing general revenue, that a constant stream of revenue in a safe way, that you can feel confident that you're going to be monetizing every month, but also you're not having to worry about the retention side of things too.
I think that's actually a good point and a good segue into sort of the next part here, where when you look at benchmarks and sort of trying to work out what conversion rates should I hit. In the previous panel there was discussion around fill rates, like what's considered good or bad. Do you guys have any sort of pointers in terms of, is it super game specific? Are there no such thing as, rule of thumb type metrics? Or are there stuff where you're willing to sort of put your neck on the line here in this panel and say, I don't know about all these other genres, but for this one, it's definitely 50% conversion rate. Also, are you guys seeing 50% conversion rates?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So I can answer whatever between 0 and 70.
Nice.
And you could argue or you could agree, and it's so much so it's so specific number that I wouldn't pick any number, and I couldn't say that which one is good and which one isn't. And then if you have like a hybrid monetization, you could have like ad monetization, then the conversion rate can be completely different than in the IAP monetization. It can be that when someone buys one IAP, it's much more valuable than ever they can like generate through ads. But still, we also have this like very long tail in the like the LTV, and that's like a big pain for our UA analytics also, that how to work with that. So I think, and also we have the huge organic user base. So I have to say that whatever.
I think it's like with most things in games, this is like there's never an easy answer. It's never like, you know, do this thing and then everything is like the game is going to be fun if we just do these two things every time. Everything is complex. Every single layer of that process is also complex. Afsar.
I think in terms of industry benchmarks, I think the last stats I read were in terms of conversion, I think 1 to 3% is average, 7 to 10% is good. And of course, some of the top games have 50% or more. But I think at base, as long as you're making more money than you're spending, I think you're in a good place. You know, so whatever, I think it's good to look at industry benchmarks just to sort of measure your performance generally. But if you're doing well, you're doing well. It's fine.
Do you agree, Afsar?
No,
Is it all about ROAS?
I agree pretty much with Saumya on that. I can talk a little bit about board games as such, because if you see in market, you'll see really low board game conversions in case of board games, and that's very much ideal for us as well. And we don't get a really good conversion. But let's say if you start comparing US or Spain market with Colombia market and Panama, you'll see a huge difference over there. So even in the same game, across the country, you're seeing a lot more difference. But at the end of the day, what Saumya is saying, that if on a large scale, at the end of the game, you have enough money that you're making, which makes you profitable enough, I think it works.
So, you know, now we've sort of set out, you know, the rocket is starting to take off, and we worked out how to scale it. We found like the perfectly scalable audience. What do you sell, and how do you determine like what is desirable for players? How do you guys approach that? Matt, do you wanna go?
Yeah,
I see you nodding there, so that's
well, it's something we do think about a lot. I mean, one of the questions is, you know, when do you introduce the monetization? And I always find it's far easier to do that straight away and take it away rather than add something to an existing feature or system. So, you know, and then how do you know, work out what it is that players really value? So we've got loads of data on things that we look at: payer conversion rate, engagement with content. We do a lot of, you know, A/B testing, LTV. But probably the most important thing for us is just like engaging with the community, listening to the feedback, because quite honestly, we've got such a loyal, hardcore player base that they're very vocal. They'll tell us what they think. They'll tell us if they like stuff and if they don't like stuff. And it's probably equally as valuable as any of the data we get. It's just really, you know, having that kind of, you know, feedback loop with the players. So that's probably one of the most important things for us.
Yeah, I think that we're seeing the same thing. We did a battle royale game a couple of weeks, and for that game we definitely also were able to work closely together with the community, not only with, you know, working out what's desirable, but also asking them, you know, what type of content are you looking for, to sort of guide the assessment. Because when you're in soft launch and starting to build your game, you have one idea of where a game is going to land, but then as users start pouring in, they can become like gravitational force that pulls it in another direction.
We also, you know, spend quite a lot of time looking at things that we can use to add value to things like our subscription service or our VIP service. So there'll be things, you know, in the past that we've asked players to pay for separately that now will roll in and just build out that kind of all-round service package. So, you know, that's something that, you know, we're spending a lot of time looking at the moment.
So how about, you know, balancing the economy, Otto? In terms of, do you need a perfectly balanced game to start, or how have you guys approached it? I know you have, you know, Hill Climb Racing 1, Hill Climb Racing 2. So those two games and titles, were there different approaches in the development there?
Yeah, very much. Actually, the Hill Climb Racing 1 has a quite bad economy. You can grind the coins as much as you want, so there's no point of selling, like, for example, coin packs. You have to come up with new things that might be desirable, and that's of course in the racing games that's easy to say that you create new vehicles and new stages and you open those with somehow. So that's one. And then we learned from the Hill Climb Racing 1 economy, and we made it much better in the Hill Climb Racing 2, so that there are more desirable things to people to get. And there was also a good question we're touching about the community, and that's something I also would like to add, that I think that we also have a huge community, and they are giving us a lot of feedback. But one thing I've learned, that we shouldn't make like the monetization decisions according to community. Don't let them do that, but they have like great ideas, and we can like learn from those. But I think the monetization and the core game, like the core game design, has to come from ourselves, and then we can like adjust things with community feedback and the overall feedback.
Yeah, I just like to concur on that point about community feedback. There's a limit to how much you need to rely on it as well. And one thing that you can do is be open and honest with players about the limits of how transparent you can be, because there will always be things that you cannot tell them. They appreciate that as well. In terms of balancing, actually, to get back to your question and not turn this into a panel about community management, Emil, I think that, one thing that's really important is to look at your entire game as one cohesive system, where your IP, your ads, even your time are all, things that you have to balance. So if you're adding a new feature or event that is suddenly a source of, a lot of rewards, you have to balance your sinks as well. Such that it is all in harmony, so to speak. So it really is sort of a systems design or an economy design problem. Even when there's IAP involved, IAP is just a sort of almost infinite source of currency, except that of course it's not fully infinite. You're getting cash money when players are using it.
So basically, when we're talking about like systems design, and I think it feels almost like a combination of chaos and game theory. Like there's so many moving parts here that it's hard to navigate. Do you need like a PhD in mathematics and economy to navigate this space? Or is that some, like Otto, I know you guys have maybe someone with that title or job description, right?
Yeah. Ilpo just spoke there. He has a PhD in physics, and I have Master of Science in physics. So, but I say that it can help, but of course you must have other ways too.
So it can start small, I guess. Afsar, how many PhDs of economy and physics do you guys have?
None.
Cool.
To answer the question, I mean, I'll go back to the question that you asked, and I firmly believe on this particular point that it is more important to push your game out, test it with the users, rather than getting the economy and sinks and sources right. You have to get the user feedback. You have to see what is happening in the system, and it will never be perfect. It has been 4 years. We have been making constant iterations on our systems, and we still feel that it is not in a perfect state. The moment you get deeper into it, you will start to think about personalization. You'll start to think in new ways of doing it. So you'll balance it differently for some players and differently for some other players. So you'll never get that balance right. I'm pretty sure that is up with even the best of the PhDs also, that it will happen.
Matt, 20 years, is the balance right?
That's a good question. We haven't always got it right. I think we've been pretty open about that. We've sometimes pushed it quite hard. Sometimes we've pulled back. It's a really interesting kind of slant on it though, because it's not always about how deep can you go with the spend, but we've been asking some really sort of tough questions recently. What is the right thing to do by our players? Even things like if we detect anomalous spend patterns, so players spending more than normal, we've introduced things recently to even let people know and just check, are you okay with your spend? Even things like, you've been playing longer than normal, just stuff like that. We see it as part of our kind of duty of care to our players to make sure that we're kind of balancing both sides of the scales a little bit.
I think that makes a ton of sense. Saumya, in terms of economy depth, how do you determine like how it should be, and do you have any tools in terms of evaluating whether you're on the right track or whether there's room for improvement? Is there any sort of hands-on tricks that you can impact?
I think to answer this question, probably the answer is going to be like for so many other things, it really depends. It depends on the kind of game that you've made, what your what the genre is. But just in general, some quick tips. I think if you can have an economy that is based on consumables more than permanent content, I think that is way easier to sort of keep that depth going on and on. I think PvP or communal games tend to monetize much more than single player experiences. But apart from that, it really is about it totally depends on your particular game, your particular genre. Just keep experimenting and don't be afraid to try new things, is what I would say.
How about you, Alex? Do you agree? Is experimentation the way ahead? You shouldn't commit too much to one, shining idea of, game X is doing this thing. I should totally just do that thing and then I'm going to be made.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with Saumya's point. I think, as one foot does not fit every shoe. It's not going to work for everything, for every single game out there. I mean, for example, our foundation as a business was very much a branding business where we put out of home styled ads within a game. That doesn't work for every single game because not every game will have an outdoor environment. So it's, it doesn't fit every sort of solution. And, from a personal experience, I absolutely love rewarded video ads. I find them a really great way to connect with the game as well as build a relationship with the advertiser. But some other people absolutely detest it. So it's you're never going to get that clear balance. And going back to the last point that Afsar said as well, actually, it's very hard to kind of, you can make one group of people happy and upset some others, and sometimes it's too hard. It's too late to find out that you've upset them because it's really hard to get them back into the game again. But I do think experimentation is key. I think adopt as many SDKs as you possibly can, see what works, and then cut the ones that don't.
So SDK integration, Otto, as a previous developer, are they always free? Are they as easy as the documentation always says?
Well, it's getting better, I would say. So things are getting better, but it has been quite a struggle. But I have to say that things gone forward.
That makes sense. I think also, Alex, to your point, like as Matt also talked about earlier, it's about finding the right model for the right customer. And if you offer a hybrid or large lineup of different models, there's less risk that a user will feel like there's nothing that fits them, or there's no offering that they can see themselves in.
Absolutely. I mean, we see some of our game publishers that we work with that have in-app purchases. They have seasons, so you buy yourself into a season. They have video ads, and they're currently trying to work out, obviously they're making a great deal of money from all these different revenue streams, but they're also trying to work out which streams they can remove to better the retention of their own players. So I would say the experimenting probably never really ends. Even if you feel like you're at a comfortable level and you've got a strong level of monetization, whilst the retention is on a nice level playing field, you're still going to need to adopt and evolve as the industry does, and as more games come out, you've got to compete to keep the loyalty there. And I think experimentation is definitely key.
I think I'm gonna grab that and sort of say, being able to adjust and move in different directions depending on where the industry is moving. And I really want to touch on a specific subject here is machine learning and sort of the advent of the ability to see what's happening or not being able to see what's happening and understanding what's going on. And I know, Saumya, this is something where you have maybe have some concerns with in terms of how much of a black box it is and the need for control and understanding what's actually happening. Is that something that you're okay to go in depth with?
Yeah, I mean, with the caveat that I have not really had that much experience directly using machine learning, so I'm certainly, open to seeing more data on that as well. I don't have so much of a concern. It's just that I think that, first of all, you need lots and lots and lots of data to make good predictions. And the other thing is, when you sort of have this black box that takes past behavior and sort of makes a prediction on future behavior, I think it's also really critical that we use our imagination to sort of take those leaps of faith and come up with some crazy new idea that maybe machine learning or AI, maybe it isn't quite there yet. Maybe one day it will be, so that's the extent of my experience with machine learning.
And Otto, I know you guys are using machine learning. Are you telling the machine like design a cool car, or is there still space for your creative designers?
Yeah, as I said in the beginning, that you should like always have the game design in your hands, and that's something that the machine learning, thank God, can't do yet still, and I think it shouldn't. But the machine learning is a good tool when you try to adjust how much to sell, to whom to sell, and so on. But of course, like in a racing game, the vehicle is something that the machine learning can't decide. It might be like the 10-wheel truck if it just decides. So you first must have something to sell, and then you adjust it with the machine learning. So in that sense, it's a good tool.
Yeah, I think to Otto's point there, as well as lots of data, you also need lots of inventory, right? I know we've spent lots of time looking at recommendation systems and machine learning kind of Amazon style delivery to our store and things like that, but ultimately I've not seen huge amounts of success with these things just simply because we don't have the the inventory. It's too shallow to really make use of it. Where we do get a lot of benefit though is with the kind of directly targeted offers, and we work with our analytics team to on the predictive modeling around that, and that's very, very effective. And I think it's okay to be quite generous with those things. They work really well for us. So we have to keep track of things like unspent currency, making sure we're not cannibalizing, and you can't be a really good analyst when it comes to that stuff. So yeah, we rely very heavily on our we've got a really solid team of super clever guys there.
Afsar, is that something you're seeing as well? Have you dipped your toes in the muddy waters of machine learning yet?
Not yet. But we have been trying a lot of things in user acquisition, especially, and I think some of the insights are pretty interesting over there. For example, the all the data that we had a few months back, we grabbed all those data, had talked with Google's team, and tried to understand what is something which can help us understand and a particular small event that can help us define what can be who can be a good pair in our game. So we came up with few of the events happening in the game, and that those events are very critical in nature, and you can see that there is a pattern between the getting converted to a pair and doing that event. So it gives you a lot of insights of how you can approach as a product person about the whole game. Maybe try to make the users do that particular event on day one, and see if it works for you. So that way, I think it's pretty interesting to utilize it.
Yeah, we tried for Bull League. We also used machine learning for some of our offer systems, but to Otto's point, we needed to work out what was desirable for the older players that we were trying to pull in and ensure that it hit at the right time. So there's definitely, I also see it like as a balance, and it's definitely something where if you're not careful, you can easily get sucked into not just the hype about it, but also just the time spent that it takes to set it up. So it's definitely something that you need to balance. How about you, Alex? Machine learning and ad monetization, is that something where you guys see an end to?
I don't think we've touched machine learning as of yet. I know we play with artificial intelligence all day long, but on the machine learning side of things, not so much. No, we're still very much focused on the good old fashioned focus groups to find out what people are really thinking, and getting testimonials and feedback straight from the gamer's point of view, just to work out if we're making a solution that pleases the player. That was the most important thing for us, is when we started, to make sure that first of all, our offering was legit, and we, our roles weren't redundant in the market. We weren't putting in a product that no one liked. So I'm glad to say that I'm still here. It does work. It does a great job. But yeah, we stray away from the machine learning side of things for now, and kind of just rely on straight from the face feedback.
I think that sort of, on the stepping stone of machine learning straight into the future. What are you guys seeing in terms of, is subscription models still where things are headed? I mean, Apple Arcade is still a thing. Google Play Pass is definitely still a thing also, but it's also some, to an extent, is a little bit of a walled garden. Where do you guys see sort of the industry moving as a whole? I'm sort of sensing a trend of hybridization being sort of the common theme. That we all agree that tends to be where things are going. But are you seeing anything interesting on the horizon, or something that you've already maybe started experimenting with in your studio? Matt, do you want to?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, like you said, things tend to become homogenized over time. Great ideas, are imitated, and and then if they work, they get blended with other things. So it's a kind of, it is a natural progression. I think for me, it's just really interesting, how we, build out that kind of service for our players. I think really smart developers will be looking at how they can line those services up with other service providers. I would love to get a free pizza every week with my RuneScape subscription, for example, and that would make my Friday night. I also think, in another direction, there's probably huge untapped potential still in UGC. I think, going a bit further than things like user design, hats and guns, etc. But how do you build like real value and let players kind of create their shared experiences in the world, and experiences that we're helping to create? And I think that's something that again we're looking at quite closely, and we see big potential in the future.
Is it the same
So
for you guys?
that,
Yeah.
Sorry
No,
about that.
Saumya, go.
No, I was actually going to say it's so interesting that you mentioned UGC, Matt, because that was something that was on my mind as well. I think that's probably something that we can explore, because when I think about some of the top games right now are Roblox and Minecraft, and that is a forum for players to sort of express their creativity and share it with the world. And I think it's just a continuation of the sort of trend that we're seeing across the industry generally, from single player games to multiplayer to MMOs, and now that is the next big step. And I think it's just a question of technology being able to support that on a wide scale.
Do you see the same thing, Afsar? Is it also, is it this kind of approach?
Well, that's pretty interesting. Although we haven't, looked into this particular thing, but it's pretty interesting. And going forward, I think more and more people would like to be more synchronous, more multiplayer in nature, and that's how the web has also kind of developed in past. We had documents that we typed in our own PCs, and then we moved to a more collaborative approach. So why not games? Why not games can have that collaboration between players, and they can do stuff like that. So I think that will be constant evolution, and it is going to happen somewhere.
I think the part of user-generated content is also balancing it in terms of moderation, and finding a good approach where you're not inviting a world of trouble in terms of legal copyrights, trademarks, and upset players. I think we're about ready to head into Q&A. So Otto, there's a few questions for you in there. I don't know if I think while Otto, you can open up the QA panel and pick the ones you think are for you. Alex, you picked out a question specifically.
Yeah, sure. I saw one come through that's asked, what sort of impact do completely seamless and native ads have on a gaming experience versus ads that disrupt? I mean, I can give two answers. I can give a professional and a personal experience for this. So on a personal level, if I see an ad, if I'm playing, say for example, a first-person shooter game on my phone, which I play a lot of, I should say, and I run past a bus stop, and I knew that last week that bus stop had a fake ad, designed by the publisher, and then this week I see that it's replaced with a McDonald's ad. It will stop me for a second, and it won't take away from my experience of the game, but what it will do to me is make me is kind of add a little bit of legitimacy to the game. It kind of makes it feel a bit more real for me. So it doesn't stop me in my track and, you know, fill me with anger. I actually look at it and go, oh, that's really cool, because that's something that I would tend to see in real life, rather than, you know, as I'm about to get in the game, you know, I'm excited, I'm hyped, and then boom, I have to watch a 30-second advert that I didn't know was coming out of the blue, and then I sit there with a big frown on my face for a second. So it's, you know, it's the way that that we're seeing it with brands and brands' feedback is, you know, brands don't want to have to interfere with the user. They don't like the feedback that they get with, for example, you know, advertising on YouTube, where you're forced to watch a couple of ads before you can get to see the content that might only be 11 seconds long that you've waited for ages to watch. But they buy it because they know it's valuable. You know, what we're doing is we're providing a solution that is valuable, but also doesn't upset the player. It actually builds a relationship in a positive way, and that really should be the main thing that both game publishers and brands consider going forward, is to build a happy relationship with everyone. So you know, so that no one's got anything bad to say about your product. No one can boycott it. No one wants to boycott your game because of the way you've done something like that. And I just think it's just a level of respect. And I think the sort of the impact that we see from it, we've never had anything negative, and it's something that it doesn't sound truthful coming from my mouth, but it's so true. We've not had a single complaint. So yeah, it's a really good position for us, and we're very pleased with our ad solution and our product. So it's working really well for us.
Excellent. Otto, have you found the QA box?
Yeah, actually took the last one from there. There's a question about the what's the successful feature difference between the hill climb racing games. And there's the biggest like the difference in those games is that hill climb racing, the original hill climb racing, is a single player game, and the hill climb racing 2 is a multiplayer game, and it has team feature, and it's more social and it's more competitive. And I think the competitiveness is something that it's making like the biggest difference in the sense of monetization in those games. But for example, hill climb racing, the one is still having like a huge DAU in terms of DAU. It's bigger than hill climb racing 2. So you can also see from there that the single player games aren't going anywhere, even though we have like the massive multiplayer games and they are monetizing very well. But still there is always demand for the single player games where you can play, which you can play with a bad internet connection or without internet connection in some, like, all over the world. So that's the one big difference between these two games.
How about the rest of the panel? Have you guys sort of seen specific? I think this is worth diving a little bit deeper into as well, because it's a really good question, and there's different features and obviously underlying motivational behaviors that you know, as monetization designers we're working with. So are there specific systems designs that you've seen work well in your experience, Saumya?
It's going to be a little bit controversial to say probably, but you know, luck always monetizes more than skill. You know, it's something that we always know, because it sort of feeds into the whole, you know, the loot box system question as well. Of course, I would never say that. I think that we as developers do have a responsibility to, you know, remember that we're here to design fun experiences and not addiction loops. So, you know, we need to keep that in mind as well. But generally, you know, when you have a game that's highly skill-based, you do tend to sort of cap the amount of revenue you can have, which is why, you know, I think about Arch Hero, for example. You know, it started out as a hyper-casual game, and you know, now they've got, you know, they've turned it into an IAP game very successfully. But you know, there is still that sort of luck element that goes into that as well. So yeah, I think that there's a, you know, yeah, I think again, it really depends from game to game.
Yeah, but I think also, Matt, you kind of touched upon this earlier as well, that the approach that you're taking is also one of, you know, it's a balanced approach, as with all things, right? That you're taking the role also of, you know, prodding a player and asking, hey, are you okay if the spend pattern suddenly changes rapidly or time spent changes?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to keep a close eye on that, but also, you know, we are using a lot of data to track things like the performance of display ads. We did a lot of A/B testing around the impact on LTV and retention from display ads, even in the free version of our game. Actually turned out it was detrimental to the kind of the day 14 retention. So we've experimented taking that out, and that seems to have worked pretty well for us. But as you said, it's very much specific on the game and the models that you've got. So yeah, it's what's right for your community and your players.
I think there's a few other questions that we grabbed from. Otto, there's another one for you. Between Hill Climb Racing and Hill Climb Racing 2, what percentage of increase have you achieved in LTV for pairs and non-pairs? This is pretty specific. Probably even NDA breaking.
Yeah, a little bit. Something that I have to say that I don't have the numbers in my hand, so and I'm not good with the numbers, even though I have some degree, but yeah,
makes sense. All right, let's see. There's how can programmatic ads increase the scale revenues for developers? Afsar, have you guys experimented sort of at Gameberry with programmatic?
So we have experimented with an auto bidding system. I'm not very sure about programmatic ads about that, but the auto bidding system, which was recently launched in few of the mediators, I think it worked really well. It got us an additional revenue of 20%, something like that from that. So that auto bidding system really worked for us.
So that's like in-app header bidding. I think programmatic, in-app header bidding, automated bidding,
something like that, I think.
Yeah, it feels like the same thing, but they're calling it different things. But I don't know. Is that Alex? Yeah, you're nodding.
There's so many different names for exactly the same thing in the ad monetization world. But yeah, basically, I mean, as Afsar said, programmatic and ad bidding can massively increase your revenue. If you've got lots of brands wanting to buy your users' data and reach their eyeballs, they're willing to bid and bid and bid. So from one month, that one user might be super valuable. The next month, they might not be as valuable, but another target group might be. So it will fluctuate, but you'll always have at least a decent constant with the programmatic side of things. One of the things that we do as well is, rather than have it on the open market, we have a private marketplace. So what we tend to do is work with brands exclusively that will outbid each other for a user's eyeballs. So which tends to see much higher eCPM that you'll be receiving on the publisher will receive at the end result.
Yeah. I think that's in general, and as a small developer, just the fact that I don't have to go in and manually, adjust waterfalls with 5 to 10% increases on a daily basis makes my life easier.
Yeah, leave that to us. We'll do it for you.
I think we're heading into the end of the panel. Unfortunately, there's one final question we might be able to get in. What is a typical payback window for 100% ad monetized casual games? Very specific. Any takers? Do you know? I guess it depends, right? Like that tends to be the trend for the panel as a whole. So is look at your game, and it depends on what you as a business are capable of handling as well. If you're a massive studio, you'll probably be okay with payback windows of 720 days. If you're not, probably a bit shorter. And generally, I think hyper casual ad payback windows tends to be set at around 5 to 7 days, right?
Yeah, but I would say in that get your monetization or ad monetization in good shape, in that sense that if you are and follow also the numbers between how much you pay for the user and how much, for example, you can check for the same network, that how much you're paying for them, for the users, and how much you're getting from them in terms of, for example, eCPMs. There might be some connection between those. So make sure that you are optimizing also the ad monetization if you have the 100%. And I would say that the bidding or programmatic ads is a very good way for that.
Yeah, we've been doing some work recently with a couple of people doing UA financing, and we're typically kind of looking at around 120% ROAS by 90 days as the kind of outer edge, because after that point it starts getting less cost effective, because obviously if you're using a UA loan, you've got to incorporate not just the revenue for the game and yourselves, you've also got to incorporate that you're actually incurring costs in that process. So it's really difficult to get a good judge. But basically, if you're not getting, your ROAS in 90 days, I think you're probably at risk of under monetizing the game anyway. Anyway, that's just me.
I do think I think Saumya also covered that there are games where it hits at day 360. That's where the most valuable players make their first conversion. So there is.
Yeah, I mean, actually, the data we saw historically was the kind of the first kind of point we indicate who those people are going to be is around day 14. So you should be able to, somewhere between day 8 and day 14, you should be able to have some indication. But different games are different beasts, and like you say, some are a lot further out. But in terms of planning, and what it comes down to me is maybe this has been mentioned, but I don't think so. Understanding player life cycle for your game. And I look at segmenting your player audience based on the life cycle that they're in. So when they are at discovery, like Matt said earlier, we need to clarify to them that monetization is a good thing, that it's not about scraping them for money, that it is about providing them with things that they care about. And I think then when you get to the learning stage where they're kind of understanding not just the gameplay, but how it fits into their daily routine, it's a completely different conversation. Eventually you get to the point where they're engaging and looking for ways to super engage them. But at the end of the day, to me, a term that Jagex themselves coined, the living game, for me is what this is about. So finding more users, doing more things more often and for longer.
And I think for me, Otto opened really hard with the phrase "be brave, try different things, start small and grow bigger." I think that's kind of where I wanna park the panel. Thank you to all the panelists for joining. You've been a pleasure to talk to, both preparing this, but also in the actual panel. I think we've covered a ton of ground, and we even managed to answer a few questions. So thank you.
Emil, that was brilliant, and everyone, thank you so much for taking part in that.
Pleasure.
There's so much of a huge area to cover when we're talking about monetization, and I think the range of teams that we've had on this panel has sort of demonstrated kind of the differences between the sort of more hyper casual end and the long-term sustainability that you're going to get into something like RuneScape. I mean, I'm thinking about the what are the value propositions for the players, for it's that immediate kind of give them an ad to give them a break in the middle of this intense hyper casual experience, or if it's thinking about the next battle pass or the next update and how you encourage people to care about that long before you even release it, so that they are looking forward to handing over that cash. And I think there were some cases, Matt, where you were talking to me once about how people basically stock up on in-game currency to buy things knowing that the next thing's coming out.
That's me. That's
me.
With you?
Oh, I'm sure.
No.
Yeah, we see it as well.
That is you as a player. Gotcha. Yeah. Get me confused. I thought it was you told me. Oh, it certainly was Matt. Cool. Anyway, guys, thank you very much. And obviously, this has been the monetization track, and it's always a kind of pleasure to be part of that. Great panel. Thank you very much, guys, for participating. We've had a great range of speakers talking about all sorts of aspects